Hi, this is John Celentano. I'm business editor with Inside Towers. Today we're at the Safer Buildings Coalition In-Building Wireless Tech and Policy Summit here in Washington, D.C. It's an interesting conference that covers all aspects of in-building wireless challenges and opportunities. And I'm here today with Manuel Ojeda, the founder and Chief Technology Officer with Morcom International. Manuel, good to see you again.
Well, good seeing you, John.
Yeah. So a lot of the discussions today have centered around how public safety communications inside buildings complements or competes with cellular communications, but you've been involved, your company's been involved in some pretty major in-building wireless projects. Maybe you could give us a sense of the type of projects you've been involved in and some of the challenges associated with deploying those types of installations.
Right. Yeah, so we have been involved in Morcom in building wireless or distributed antenna systems since probably it got started. We're one of the pioneers, and we have experience in both public safety systems and cellular systems. So just today at the conference, that was one of the topics, hot topics that have been discussed. And what I see is that they really serve two different purposes, John. Whereas in cellular coverage, you are trying to provide more tools for the workforce that works in the building or the tenants of the building. In public safety DAS, you are trying to really provide the first responders with fail-proof system where they can communicate in case of an emergency. And for that, you need to have backups, you need to have battery support for the system, you need to make sure that everything is shielded. Sometimes you even need redundancy. So there are two very different markets. Sometimes you can use part of the infrastructure in one and the other one, but not always.
Do you install them as parallel systems or where they actually operate separately, or is there ability to converge them at some point?
Right. We've done both.
Yeah.
I would say most of the time they are completely separate systems because also the stakeholders are different. But sometimes we have actually integrated them and used the same passives, but different active elements in the system.
Okay, good. There's always the challenge of meeting the requirements of the AHJ, right? The authority that has jurisdiction.
Right.
And that varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction.
It does, John. Yeah, the AHJs are very different. For example, here in Washington, D.C., we have the OUC. They have a very well-defined set of rules. In other jurisdictions, they have similar rules that are well-specified, like in Arlington County, for example. But in smaller jurisdictions, there really is not a well-defined parameter. However, most of them follow what NFPA requires, NFPA 70 and 1221.
Okay.
And that includes the robustness of the system. Mm-hmm. It includes what you need to monitor, what kind of alarms you need, and what percentage of coverage you need in the building.
Usually the public safety systems are covering areas where the public would not normally go, like
yes,
parking garages
or
elevator shafts or areas that...
equipment rooms. Sometimes there's like basements that have like boilers or furnaces or whatever. All those need to be covered.
Yeah. Okay. So what would be an example of a big deployment, like either for an enterprise or for an industrial application or a commercial application?
Right. So I will give you one that we've done recently, and actually I was just talking to the official that's in charge of that building, which is the U.S. Department of Justice RFK building. The RFK building is the oldest building they have, and it's here in D.C., and it's a historical building. That's where the Attorney General sits. Okay. He has an office, I believe, in the 5th floor. And when we came to them and they explained to us, we have coverage of the perimeter, and we have coverage of some of the inside open areas. but we have trouble with the indoor part of it.
Ah.
So we told them, I think Morcom can help you with this. We did a survey. We measured the signal levels existing before we installed the system, and there were huge gaps that we found. And the interesting thing was that, they approved our proposal, and we did deploy a system a couple years ago. But the interesting thing was that building, I don't know if you've been there or not, but when you walk in, it has some really nice hallways that date back to the 1950s or maybe even before, with very ornate arches and very ornate ceilings with paintings and whatnot. And they said, hey, Manuel, you can do whatever you want, but do not touch any of these hallways. So that's a challenge. So at that time, our installers or our technicians have to be really, really very careful and very savvy in designing and deploying, because there are many cases, museums, other older buildings where you want to preserve what's there, and we really can't run the cables there. So that's one of the challenges that sometimes we encounter.
I would think a building like that too is of such structure and materials, it doesn't allow RF to propagate very easily.
Right. In fact, that's the reason why they had the problem, because the walls are very thick, and they have several underground systems, levels, where there's really no propagation from the outside.
So they're happy with what you did?
Yeah, they were very happy. The gentleman was here today.
Yeah.
He was very happy today, and they have other facilities where they want to implement the system.
Great example, I know. So, well, this is great. I'm glad we had a chance to catch up and share some of your experience, and so we'll catch the rest of the show and go from there. So,
right. Thank you so much, John.
Thank you, and thanks you all for joining us.